Hello, my name is Matthew Bors with the Augusta-Richmond County Public Library System's very own Wallace Branch Library. Today, I'll be introducing you to 10 common bird species in our area by telling you a little bit about the basics of their life histories, information such as diet, habitat, nest types, and so forth. I won't go into exhaustive detail for each species, but instead I'll give you some brief overviews of each to help you get started. Each bird is far more complex than I can go over with just this presentation, so I highly encourage you to dive in more if you find yourself interested. So, a little bit about myself. In addition to having worked in libraries for a few years, my undergraduate degree is in biology, and I've been a bird watcher for 17 years, so since I was 11. And before I entered the library world, I used to do quite a bit of volunteer work helping with bird-related field studies, stuff like colony monitoring, population censusing, and helping give educational programs like this one. So enough about all that, let's go. So, why bird watching? Well, why not? It's a very low cost to no cost, low tech to no tech hobby that anyone can enjoy anywhere. It's a wonderful excuse to go outside and enjoy nature, or can even be done out your window. Also, depending on how invested you get into it, it can be a great way to contribute to science. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology, the world's premier bird science institute, and who provided much of the information for this program, regularly holds citizen science programs where people aid in measuring bird populations just by going out and making a list of what birds they see and how many. An ongoing example of this is the eBird program, which allows people to log on and share what they've seen and where they saw it online. A more well-known example is the annual Christmas bird count, where people form teams to go count birds in the winter. Some people just enjoy the thrill of filling out their life list, which is a checklist of birds they've seen, and that's cool too. Personally, I don't keep a life list, but there's really not a wrong way to birdwatch. Even just going out and enjoying what you see without being able to fully identify it is perfectly fine as well. Now, on to the most important part of all this, the birds. I'm sure some of you are already familiar with this adorable little bird, but here we have the Carolina chickadee. The species is usually found in forests and forest edges, making it a very common denizen in yards. Its diet consists mainly of insects, especially outside of winter, but is also quite fond of seeds. Carolina chickadees nest in tree holes often made by other species, namely woodpeckers, but can excavate holes themselves as well. These little birds are also well-known birdhouse tenants. Carolina chickadees are year-round residents of our state, meaning they don't leave in the summer or winter. Listen for their four-part whistle that sounds like dee-dee-dee-bay, or their squeaky chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee calls. Males, females, and young birds all look alike, with some minor differences only being noticeable in the hand. So, this is a picture of a bird I helped band for an ongoing censusing project on Jekyll Island back in 2014. Kind of cool, huh? Cute little birds. But despite their small size, chickadees are quite bold and are sometimes known to take food out of the hand. On to our next one. So, this is another bird that many of us here in the southeast are familiar with, the northern cardinal. It's a bird commonly found in open woodlands and forest edges and backyards. The cardinal's cone-shaped bill is perfectly suited for cracking open tough seeds, but they're also known to eat insects and berries as well. They build twig nests in thick shrubby areas and densely foliated trees, which means there's a lot of leaves, a lot of branches, kind of tangled up together. The adult males are bright red, like in the picture on the lower right, and females are dull brown with some red edges, like the one above. The young birds resemble females, except they do not have a black face mask, like you see here. You just kind of take that away, and you have your young bird that probably hatched that year. So, fun fact, part of cardinal courtship involves the male feeding the female. You can recognize them by their loud cheer, cheer, whoop, whoop, whoop songs. So going back to what I mentioned earlier about those beaks, the northern cardinal is a part of the family which includes the grosbeaks, which, as their name implies, if you know a little French, also have large cone-shaped beaks that specialize in cracking open seeds. I can speak from experience that their bite is very painful. On to the next one. So, another familiar face is the blue jay. These stunning birds are most often found in forests and forest edges. They're omnivorous, which means that they eat both plants and animals and whatever they can get their beaks on, but they're known to be particularly fond of seeds, insects, bird eggs, and even other birds' nestlings. These birds build nests that are twig cups lined with rootlets, mud, grass, and other fibers placed between tree branches, often higher up in the tree, up in the canopy. Male, female, and juvenile blue jays are indistinguishable in the fields, but juveniles can be aged in the hand, but only by trained ornithologists. So, fun fact, did you know that blue jays are members of the crow family, Corvidae, which also includes magpies, ravens, and rooks? Like other corvids, blue jays often form small family flocks with nestlings from previous years, sometimes staying around to help raid next year's brood, or, clutch of eggs. Like other corvids, they have a wide range of vocalizations, but blue jays are easy to identify with their loud and piercing jay, jay calls. So on to our next one. Now for a bird you might not be as familiar with. This is the common grackle. These prismatic blackbirds are often found in open areas, at forest edges, and around suburbs and marshes. They eat a wide variety of foods, including reptiles and small mice, but like most other blackbirds, they mostly eat seeds and bugs. Their nests are cups of twigs placed high in trees, often near water. These are gregarious, medium-sized, dark iridescent songbirds with longish tails and straw-colored eyes. Males are much darker and more iridescent than females, like this guy right here. And the females look more like this. They're kind of more of a dull brown overall. While they may immediately look pitch black, they're actually iridescent, which means that their color changes depending on the light and the angle you look at them from, like a prism. They can display brilliant dark blues, greens, and purples, as well as their just kind of overall dark exterior. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. The typical song given by both males and females is a short, squeaky gurgle that sounds very much like a rusty gate being moved. These stunning birds often form very large and noisy flocks outside of the summer months and can be quite a sight to behold as they descend on fields and marshes to forage for seeds and bugs. These flocks often include other blackbird species such as red-winged blackbirds and meadowlarks if you're in the right area. So now for our state bird. This is the brown thrasher. This fairly secretive bird can be found in and around thickets, bushes, hedges, and other shrubby areas. They typically feed on insects that they catch in the air or dig up in the leaf litter, but also eat berries and some seeds. Their nests are cups of twigs and small branches placed in low shrubbery, or sometimes even on the ground itself. While typically timid, brown thrashers can also display real bravado when their nests are threatened, often aggressively dive-bombing potential predators. They're members of the mockingbird family, being able to impressively mimic other birds and sounds, but not quite as robustly as true mockingbirds. Mockingbirds often repeat a mimicked song or sound 4 times, then switch it up, which brown thrashers usually call only 2 times and aren't as spot on with their mimicry. They also have a long, complex, rambling song that they sometimes sing that you kind of have to hear to understand. If you'd like to hear it, at the end I'll give a link to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's website where I got most of these pictures and this information, and you can hear it there. So next on our list is one of my favorites, the brown-headed nuthatch. Aside from having a name that sounds like an old-timey insult, these delightful feathered friends can be found acrobatically climbing trees, particularly pines and wooded areas. In addition to seeds, they also pry bark off trees to search for insects to eat. Adults and juveniles of both sexes are similar in appearance. These birds build their nests in old woodpecker holes in trees and telephone poles, but are also known to occasionally use birdhouses or excavate their own holes. Nests are lined with pine straw and other materials like down or moss. Their songs are very cute and very squeaky, beady, beady, as well as a variety of other rubber duck kind of noises. Brown-headed nuthatch are among the birds known for using tools, members of the crow family being another example. In these guys' case, they've been known to use pieces of bark to pry open other pieces of bark off of trees when it's hunting for bugs. Like blue jays, these birds sometimes form family groups with the young from previous years hanging around to help raise next year's brood. So another familiar face. This is the Carolina wren. This is a spry little songbird that's particularly common in shrubby fields, forests, wetlands, and of course, backyards. Their diet consists primarily of insects, but they do also eat some berries. If you've ever had a bird try to build a nest in your mailbox or old pair of boots you left sitting outside, it was very likely from a Carolina wren. These opportunistic nesters build bulky nests in low, open cavities, and are certainly not too picky about what that looks like. Males, females, and juveniles are all alike in appearance, aside from some minor differences that, once again, trained ornithologists can tell in the hand under the right conditions. Despite their small size and earthy coloration, these birds are hard to miss with their loud songs of Chickadee, Chickadee, or Germany, Germany, as well as their habit of boldly announcing their presence from an exposed place. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, we've been looking at just one bird at a time on each slide, and these even look like the same species, but you're saying they're not. What gives? You may also realize that this will actually make 11 common species that we'll talk about today, but this is a special case worth learning about. Corvids, the crow family, they're my specialty, so I apologize in advance if I go a little overboard here. Surprise, we actually have two crow species here in Augusta. The larger and chunkier American crow and the slightly smaller, more streamlined, water-loving fish crow. Both species can be found in just about any habitat, but are particularly fond of forests, forest edges, and disturbed habitats like landfills and parking lots. Fish crows, however, are usually not found terribly far away from a water source like a river or a lake. These birds are also true omnivores like the blue jay we talked about earlier. If it's even remotely edible, these birds will eat it. But they're particularly fond of meat such as eggs, reptiles, roadkill, and your leftovers in the trash. Males and females of both species look alike, with juveniles having a dull brown wash that's only noticeable in the right light. Like common grackles, these birds are iridescent and can show a brilliant range of blues, greens, and purples in the right light from the right angle. Both species build large cups of twigs, branches, and other materials high in the tops of trees, with fish crows being a little bit less picky about the height in environments where a tall pine tree isn't an option. While both species are highly social outside of the breeding season, they're fairly solitary nesters, aside from any young from previous year who are sticking around to help raise this year's current brood, kind of like some of the other birds we talked about. So, the best way to tell these two birds apart is that the American crows typically give a deeper, raspier "ah," while fish crows give a nasal "nyah." The former of these two is also a bit chunkier and shaggier overall, with fish crows being about 2 inches smaller and more streamlined. But voice is the best way to tell the difference between these two. American crows are found all over the U.S., while fish crows are only found along the East Coast and the Southeast, but surprisingly have been expanding their range over the last 20 years due to an increase in man-made water features, like lakes and so on. So on to our next one. So while all the birds we've talked about up until now have been year-round residents, next up on our list is a summer migrant. This is the Mississippi kite. I know it's a little bit late to be talking about this right now, but I feel like it's a bird that we should bring up because it's a very beautiful bird, very common in our area in the summertime. This is a hawk that comes to the southeastern United States in the summer and flies all the way back to Central America in the fall. Their habitat varies by region, but in general they like big open areas like fields and open woodlands. You get to see a lot of these birds. They like to ride the updrafts around the hill area, Somerville area. Their diet is primarily large and medium-sized bugs that they catch on the wing, but they can also eat lizards, snakes, mice, smaller birds, and bats. Mississippi kites are fairly flexible in where they build their nests, but in general they build a loose, shallow cup nest of twigs and other materials in the tops of trees. In the eastern part of their range, for example, like here in Georgia, they tend to prefer old-growth tree stands, or clusters, if you will. Adults have similar plumages, or feathers, and juveniles are overall streakier and more mottled in appearance. Here's the juvenile. See, it's kind of dirty looking, and then we have the adult right here, which is very clean, slatey gray, very pretty bird with just bright red eyes. These graceful flyers are fairly social, so when you see one, you're likely to see other. They also have a whistling call that starts on a high note and then trickling a low note, kind of a and it kind of has a rhythmic pattern, a little bit of a waltz, if you will. And so now to our final bird, the stunning painted bunting. This is another migratory bird that arrives here in mid-spring and flies to Central America and Cuba in the fall. Again, it's a little late to be talking about it right now. It's just being filmed in the fall. But again, this is a bird worth knowing about. Well, we're kind of at the northern limit of their range. These birds are commonly found in semi-open, shrubby areas, particularly if you're on the coast and the dunes with lots of wax myrtle. But here you can often see or hear their complex, bouncy, warbly song at places like Chickadee Swamp, where there's a mix of shrubs, tall trees, and water. Their food consists largely of berries and seeds, with the aforementioned wax myrtle being a particular favorite, but also insects, with buntings being particularly insectivorous, which means they primarily eat bugs in the breeding season. They tend to nest in low, dense vegetation, but can also nest higher up in trees if there's no other suitable habitat. Adult males have the colorful plumages like you see in the bottom picture, becoming fully vibrant after their second year, while females and juvenile males have a very pleasant light green like in the picture above. Green birds can be accurately aged and identified in hand, but not reliably from a distance. Just absolutely gorgeous birds. Their taxonomy has changed a little, but these birds actually belong to the same family as cardinals, Cardinalidae. While all native songbirds and non-game birds are protected from being kept without a permit in the U.S. under the Migratory Songbird Act, unfortunately, one threat that this bird faces in the wild is illegally capturing them and selling them for the pet trade on their wintering grounds in like the Caribbean and Central America. So, what do you need to get started? Just your curiosity. But, you know, here are a few other things you might want to look into if you're interested in getting started with bird watching. So an ID guide is pretty much essential if you want to learn more about birds, and luckily there's some great options. First off, our books, of course. You can check some out from us or really any other library. They're very common. Stokes, National Geographic, and Sibley's guides are all good picks, and usually easy to find in just about any library or bookstore. The All About Birds online database is absolutely fantastic and 100% free. Most of the information from this talk and a lot of the pictures came from there too. You can look up birds by name, family group, or even shape. Cornell Lab of Ornithology, the group that hosts the site, is the world's premier bird science lab, so you can always trust the information that you get from there too. They also have a free app called Merlin, named after a species of North American falcon. That's absolutely great for beginners too. If you're having trouble identifying a bird, you can download it to your tablet or smartphone, and it's pretty easy to use. I used it before. If you like apps, if you like to use that kind of thing, it's worth looking into. If you really start to get interested in bird watching, binoculars are a great investment, but they can be pricey. They're not necessary if you're just starting out or just a casual observer, just want to observe what you see in your backyard. But something to keep in mind because they can make your experience so much more fun and rewarding when you get to see these birds up close. And finally, where can you find birds? Well, the answer is everywhere. I always tell folks that as soon as you know what you're looking for, you'll start noticing a lot more birds everywhere you go. But in terms of places around here to find birds, Chickadee Swamp is excellent at any time of the year. Songbirds, waterfowl, birds of prey. It's absolutely one of the best places around here that I know of to find birds. When the nature centers are open, the staff there can also probably teach you more about what you can find there. The Augusta River Walk that goes by the Savannah River is also a great place to find waterfowl, swallows, songbirds, and hummingbirds in the summer, as well as birds of prey soaring over the waterway, trying to catch fish or other birds. Even downtown can be a decent place to find birds. In particular, be on the lookout for nocturnal birds like the common nighthawks at sundown in the summertime. Now, your homework is to look those up for yourselves. Urban bird watching can be a lot more fun and rewarding than you might think. Your own backyard is often a fantastic place to see birds too. Most yards imitate forest edge habitats, so many times you'll find many of the same kind of birds you'd see there right outside your window. Bird feeders and bird baths are also great ways to attract more birds to your yard as well. Sometimes offering food and or water can attract rare birds if they're in the area. This is especially true of hummingbird feeders in winter. Actually, in the past 20 years, we've been seeing a lot more overwintering hummingbirds or hummingbirds from the west wintering here, such as the calliope, black-chinned, and rufous hummingbirds. So that about wraps up my talk for today. I just want to go ahead and show you my sources in case you want to look them up on your own. I highly encourage you to. Again, since this is all cursory information, all the information I gave you and more can be found at the All About Birds website. Here's the individual links, individual citations to each bird. Again, it's an excellent resource. I absolutely recommend it. And most importantly, on behalf of the Wallace Branch Library and the Augusta-Richmond County Library System, I thank you again for your time, and I wish you happy bird watching.